Please adhere to YouTube's selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during the video. All actions are performed by professionals. Alright, so today I'm going to be smoking and reviewing the Djarum Black Cappuccino cigarettes from Indonesia, which contain 25 milligrams of tar and 1.6 milligrams of nicotine, and are, of course, a cappuccino flavored clove cigarette. Thank you so much to Mr. Lopez for having been kind enough to contribute this pack right here to the channel for me to make a review all about. I am looking forward to giving this pack a go, and I'm looking forward to letting y'all know just how they are. Thank you so much once again to Mr. Lopez for the contribution to the channel. But what is Djarum Black as a brand? Well, Djarum Black is an Indonesian clove cigarette brand that was first introduced in 2001 by, as one would expect, Djarum, a large tobacco manufacturer from Indonesia. Each pack has distinct packaging with a focus on the color black, and each cigarette is rolled with black paper, giving them a unique look when compared to other tobacco products. While I don't know if Djarum Black as a brand was successful from the get-go or not, I do know that the variety I have with me today was first introduced in 2004, just 3 years after the brand's initial introduction, and supposedly, according to Djarum, this variety was the world's first cappuccino-flavored clove cigarette. Today, Djarum Black is, without a doubt, quite the iconic brand, both inside and outside of Indonesia, and has even found a niche for itself in the United States market, where they must be marketed as filtered cigars rather than cigarettes due to federal regulation. Some of my favorite tobacco products from years ago were Djarum Black filtered cigars, and so as such, I am very curious to try a real Indonesian market Djarum Black cigarette for the very first time today. How will these be, and will I end up enjoying them? Well, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. Although if I had to guess, I'm probably going to like these quite a bit. I do suppose without further ado though, I should probably go ahead and quickly cover the packaging of, well, the Djarum Black Cappuccino Clove cigarettes I have with me today. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get the cellophane all off. I'm going to get the pack all opened up and let y'all know just what the cigarettes inside the pack actually look like, what they feel like, and what the quality of them is like. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get one of the cigarettes inside this pack all lit up, and I'm going to, well, find out how these cigarettes actually are for myself for the very first time. And once I found out just how they are and gotten my fill of nicotine, I'm then going to go ahead and give you guys my final thoughts on this pack, and I'm going to give it a rating as well. But first off, as said, we've got to start with the packaging, and we can see that this is indeed a hard pack of cigarettes, but it's a little bit thinner than normal because there are only 16 clove cigarettes inside this pack right here. So it's a little bit longer and a little bit thinner than your standard hard pack of cigarettes from the United States. Overall, look-wise, we can see we get the design down here covering up the bottom 60% of the pack, but the top 40% is that of a warning label. We get a pretty gruesome photo right here of somebody's throat. Just says, warning, smoking causes lung cancer. And then we get like a quit smoking helpline right there. That's all on a black background with the photo itself just being a photo with black borders just right there and right there. And that's all that's really going on with the warning label on the front of this pack. Moving on to the actual design of the sort of branding itself, I would say we can see there is a border of a sort of, I would have to say, like light beige mocha cappuccino sort of color. Of course, these are cappuccino flavored clove cigarettes, so it makes sense why they'd want to use a more sort of cappuccino color, I would say. But we can see we get that border going around a background of black in the very center right there. And of course, well, these are Djarum Black, so there has to be a black piece of packaging somewhere on the, well, packaging. We can see in gold, it just says Djarum right there, and then under that we just get the black line, sort of stylization logo, I guess is really the right way of putting it. Basically, it just says Djarum Black right there with the A stylized as a red triangle, which definitely makes this pack look a little bit more distinct from a distance, if you ask me. All of this text right here is indeed embossed. Is the Djarum text itself embossed as well? I don't believe it is, but the black text right here, which is actually not black text, it's white text with a red triangle, but it says black. This is all embossed though, which is something that I do appreciate. It's not super heavy embossment, but it is there nonetheless. Moving on, below this text right here in a gold or sort of cappuccino color, we can see we get a little bit of a, I would have to say, a cappuccino cup design, a little bit of a hot smoke wisping up into the air, and we can see it's got the area where you hold it and whatnot kind of thing, and a little bit of a platter underneath to catch any spills. And then under that, in that gold once again, or in that cappuccino color, it just says cappuccino flavor right there in English. And then under that, on the sort of border going all the way around the design in the center, it just says 16 Kretek filter right there, which just means 16 clove cigarettes, or filtered clove cigarettes to be precise. And overall, I think the front of this packaging looks pretty solid. It's not particularly complex by any means. It is a more simple piece of packaging than not, but it is just a very clean and satisfying look. The black background itself is that of a dark yet sort of ashy black background in my personal opinion, and the cappuccino color itself is just like really satisfying and nice on the eyes. And overall, this packaging is, in my opinion at least, quite satisfying on the eyes in general if we ignore the warning label right here. Overall, in my opinion, a very solid look, a distinct look from a distance, and a good look up close. There's not a terrible amount of detail going on by any means, but overall, it's a pretty nice look that I do quite like, and it's a look that is quite familiar to me as somebody who has smoked many Djarum black filtered cigars from the United States. The packaging is really not insanely different, although it is very differently sized, but the actual design on the packaging is not crazy different from what I've seen in the past. Moving on from the front of the packaging though to the back, we can see we get that same warning label once again, and pretty much the exact same design down here as well. Nothing too crazy going on, no differences between the front and the back of the packaging, although there is one thing to mention, and that's the tax stamp right here. Although I do think I'm going to cover that once I actually finish covering the rest of the actual design of the, hard pack itself. I think I should probably do that first before I go ahead and cover the tax stamp right there, which looks fantastic in my personal opinion. Let's go ahead and move on to this side of the packaging. I do think we can see we get a, I would have to say, background of that sort of mocha, sort of beige color. We can see the tax stamp just a little bit right there, and then under that it just says SKM, which just means that these are machine rolled Kretek cigarettes. There's different like 3-letter designations for different types of cigarettes in Indonesia. So there's like hand rolled unfiltered Kretek cigarettes, there's machine rolled filtered ones, there's machine rolled unfiltered ones, there's like Clobot cigarettes, which are like corn husk rolled cigarettes. There's different designations for different types of cigarettes in Indonesia, and since these are machine rolled filtered Kretek cigarettes, it says SKM right there. Below that we get a sort of a box, black border going around the box with white in the center, and it just says the tar and nicotine inside. The cigarettes inside this pack just says these cigarettes contain 25 milligrams of tar and 1.6 milligrams of nicotine, as previously mentioned at the beginning of this video. And then below that we just get the barcode right there. Nothing too much crazy going on, pretty much just an informational side of the packaging, and the same can be said about the other side as well, which pretty much just blank with that sort of mocha sort of background once again. And at the very bottom in black, it just says basically do not sell this pack of cigarettes, or do not sell any cigarettes to underage people under the age of 18 or to pregnant women. I find it very interesting that they specify pregnant women. That's not something they specify in the United States. They just say don't sell to people under the age of 21 or previously 18, because the smoking age in the United States used to be 18. So pretty interesting that they do specify that, and that's definitely a little bit of a difference just in regulation, I'll acknowledge. But yeah, nothing too much crazy going on with this side of the pack other than that. One interesting thing to mention though is that of course excuse me, is that of course since we have this sort of border right here, and then this is the same color. It is worth mentioning that the design technically does stretch all the way around the packaging, which is something that I do really like seeing, I'll acknowledge. I really like designs that stretch around the packaging, and that is continued on the top of the packaging as well. As we can see, this goes all the way to the top, and when taking a look at the very top, we get a black background in the center right there, and then it just says Djarum in that sort of, I would have to say, like gold sort of text that we see on the front of the packaging right there. It's a little bit different than the sort of mocha text, but it's pretty similar, so it's kind of hard to tell the difference, but it's a little bit different. But it just says Djarum right there, and I believe that is embossed. But on either side, we get that sort of mocha sort of background, and that connects up to the sides of the packaging just like that. So the background even stretches over to the top, even with this warning label right here. And that is something that I do quite like. Moving on to the bottom, we can see it doesn't quite stretch around on the bottom so much. We just get a black background, just says Djarum black right there. Just says PT Djarum Kudus Indonesia, and then it just says code production, that just means production code, and then we just get a bunch of numbers right there that are just telling us probably some useful information about when this pack was made or where it was shipped or something along those lines. Is there anything else that I want to mention about this packaging before we go ahead and move on to the tax stamp? I think that was about all there was to the packaging. Yeah, really nothing too crazy going on with this packaging in my personal opinion, but just an overall solid look that is distinct, that gets the job done, that looks pretty good, and it's a look that I quite like. It's simple. I wouldn't describe it as being elegant, but it's simple, it's easy to look at, and it's just overall quite distinct. And overall, I gotta admit, this is pretty solid packaging in my personal opinion, and I do quite like the black background in the center right here. And of course, the Djarum black logo itself is quite iconic to me. Overall, I gotta admit, I like this packaging a decent amount. Let's go ahead and cover the tax stamp on the back and over to the side though, just real quick. And we can see it is, in my opinion, one of the most elegant cigarette tax stamps that I've ever seen, kind of thing. I've seen a bunch of cigarette tax stamps from like the UK, from Ireland, from a couple other countries around the world, but consistently Indonesia has the best looking tax stamps. And this one is no different, just says SKM right there, has some other numbers under that, just says RP 1.231, and then a slash BTG. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Maybe that's the tax that needs to be put on the pack of cigarettes. I'm not exactly sure. Under that, though, we get a little bit of a holographic line that I assume is pretty hard to fake. That is just kind of shining a little bit, which is pretty good in my personal opinion. And then to the side of that, it just says Indonesia 2024. So that must have been when this pack was produced. And then under that, we get a very intricate green design of a fish right here. So yes, this cigarette tax stamp has a fish on it, which I think looks fantastic. We get a little bit of a sort of eagle right there or something along those lines as well, along with just a bunch of other sort of intricate details to the tax stamp, which just looks fantastic. In black, we get some text right here. It just says RP 36.175/16 BTG. I don't know if that's the price of this pack or if that's how much tax is put on this pack for what it is. I'm not exactly sure. If y'all know, let me know in the comments down below. Either way though, this tax stamp looks fantastic in my personal opinion, and I gotta admit, once again, Indonesia has made a great looking cigarette tax stamp, and I quite like my fish. I don't know what kind of fish it is, but I love that the cigarette tax stamp has a fish on it. That is so goated. I'm not gonna lie, y'all, that is so goated. Without further ado though, I do think it is now time for me to go ahead and get the cellophane all off, and I do think it is now time for me to go ahead and get, well, this pack of cigarettes all opened up momentarily. Let's see if I can get the rest of the cellophane off. I would like to get the rest of the cellophane off if I can. I might have to use my knife for this. Sometimes, you know, the cellophane on the packaging does not want to come off properly, and that seems to be what we're dealing with today. Let's see if I can get it off, though, without actually damaging the rest of the packaging. There we go. There we go. Got it all off. I'm going to go ahead and put both my cellophane and my little write-up I had for the beginning of the video over to the side inside my backpack so I don't be littering or anything like that, of course. and just get that all in there kind of thing. I can crumple it up just a little bit, ain't no biggie. I ain't using that piece of paper again, so I'll just crumple it up just a little bit just to make it fit properly. Go and put my knife away, and now let's go ahead and just take a look at the packaging without the cellophane on it. And overall, you know, I gotta admit, does this look better with the cellophane off than on? I'd have to say it certainly does. Overall quality-wise, so far, this packaging seems to be perfectly fine quality, I'll acknowledge. Although, one of the things I've noticed with other packs of Djarum, specifically Djarums from the United States, is that sometimes once you get the pack opened up, they don't want to close very well. So it's like below average, but it doesn't look like it kind of thing. But right off the bat, the packaging of these looks to be pretty solid quality. Nothing too crazy, but certainly not bad by any means, about average. And wow, I can smell these through the packaging. I can smell these through the packaging right now. And a lot of times with clove cigarettes, you're smelling them and you're smelling really just the clove kind of thing. With this, on the other hand, it's like complete mocha vanilla, like espresso, hot chocolate, sort of very like milky, creamy, vanilla-y, a little bit of nuttiness kind of going on kind of thing. I'm gonna have to talk more about the smell of these cigarettes once I actually get one out, but they smell fantastic and I can smell them through the packaging. That is something I do like. I do like smelling my cigarettes through the packaging. That's how I know they're gonna be quite tasty, but as long as it's a good smell through the packaging, at least. If it smells like mold through the packaging, I don't think that's a good sign, but these thankfully do not. Texture-wise, the pack itself, like up here on the warning label, it's just that of a printed sort of, I would have to say paperboard, a little bit glossy kind of thing, and same with the border, just going around the center design on the front of the packaging. But once we get right here in the center, it's that of a matte sort of texture, like that of a matte, smooth texture, with the text itself right here having that sort of glossy texture. And the same can be said about the back and the top. The bottom itself has that sort of matte texture as well. That is something that I do really like. So overall, definitely some texture differences with different areas of the packaging, and that's something that I do much appreciate. I do suppose without further ado, I should probably go ahead and get this pack all opened up. We should probably take a look at what's actually on the inside. So let's see. All right, so the tax stamp right here, I'm gonna have to pull up a little bit harder than I might want to. Let's see if I can get this all opened up. It didn't take too much effort at all. No complaints on my behalf. Let's go ahead, do the reveal. There we go, y'all. There we go. Is there anything on the inside of the lid? There is not. Taking a look at the cigarette insert, it is that of I would have to say, like mocha cappuccino, sort of gold-ish look in my personal opinion. And then we get a gold foil on the very inside right here. And that gold foil has a triangle on it, just like the triangle right here. So this is just letting us know that this is actually a foil that is unique to the Djarum Blacks, probably unique to the Djarum Black Cappuccinos, to be precise, if I had to guess, because maybe other packs of Djarum Blacks don't use gold foil in Indonesia. I'm not sure. Maybe they use black foil instead. Might be unique, might not. I can't say, as this is my first ever pack of Djarum Blacks that are actually from the Indonesian market. But yeah, overall, nothing too crazy going on with the foil itself. Just that triangle right there, just letting us know it's a pack of Djarum Blacks. Let's see how easily it pulls out. Ooh, how easily is it gonna pull out? All right. Ooh, very satisfying pull out. I gotta admit, very, very, very satisfying. Not the most insanely clean. I'm like, we've got some bits right here that kind of got stuck, but very satisfying. It took a little bit of effort to get it out, kind of thing. I do really like that. I'm gonna go and put the foil in my backpack. Don't want it to fly away if a breeze catches it or anything like that. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the cigarettes inside the pack. And wait, hold up a minute. This doesn't have black paper. These don't have black paper. It's a Djarum Black without black paper. It's a Djarum Black without black paper. What? I mean, like, I guess it kind of makes sense, because when I think cappuccino, I don't really think like black cigarette paper, but when I think Djarum Black, I think black cigarette paper. And these do not have black cigarette paper. Okay. That's not too big of a deal. That's just an unexpected, I'll acknowledge, but I was not expecting that, I'll admit. And one other thing I want to mention, I feel like these are slightly slimmer than standard size cigarettes. Let me get a pack of cigarettes out of my backpack real quick. I've got a pack of basic 100s with me today. And let's go ahead and just real quick. So one other thing to mention is that are these a little bit longer than your normal king size pack of cigarettes? I'm not sure in all honesty. But yes, these are, so this is the Djarum Black on this side, and this is the normal cigarette. This is the basic red 100. The Djarum Black Cappuccinos are indeed a little bit thinner. I think it might be starting to sprinkle, I hope not. The Djarum Cappuccinos are indeed a little bit thinner than your normal cigarette. I would say they are like semi-slims, to be precise. I'm gonna go ahead and put that back real quick, my pack of basics back. That is, wipe my nose real quick, because my nose is running just a little bit. It's just a little bit chilly out here, I'll acknowledge. I'm gonna go ahead and close the pack up, which, oh, it's not really wanting to, but it did close. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the look of this cigarette and see what it smells like in just a moment as well. As said, just a little bit thinner than your normal cigarette by all means. We can see there is a little bit of nicotine staining on the paper itself, which is not a particularly big deal. That is pretty normal for Clove cigarettes. And of course, taking a look at this cigarette, it is not your standard Djarum Black look by any means. We get a beige, sort of brownish filter at the very top. I'm not going to call this a cork style filter because it's not, though. This is sort of a marbleized. This has sort of a marbleized texture to it, I would say. Like if I'm looking at a marble countertop and I see the texture of it, that's kind of what the texture on the filter of this cigarette is like. So it's kind of like a marbleized cork style filter, I guess is probably really the right way of putting it. But under that marbleized cork style filter, we can see we just go to normal cigarette paper with horizontal lines going all the way down it. And on the marbleized cork style filter, we can see there is a, I would have to say, dark sort of ashy, not quite black, but it's like a dark ashy, almost sort of like black, but it's still got sort of a gold sheen to it, line just right there. And then under that in black, it just says black right there with the red triangle right there in the center. And that's just letting us know that this is indeed a Djarum Black cigarette, even if it does not have black paper. Is there any perforation on the filter? I am going to use my flashlight because it's getting a little bit dark out here. Started this video a little bit late. Let's see. I am not seeing any perforation on the filter, so I'm going to say there's no perforation for the moment. Yeah, I want to say there's no perforation on the filter of these cigarettes, which is pretty interesting. These are definitely more of a mild Clove cigarette than not when compared to other Clove cigarettes in Indonesia, or some other Clove cigarettes within Indonesia. So it is pretty interesting that there is no perforation on the filter. I was honestly expecting there to be some, but there is not. Maybe that's just due to the fact that they're slim cigarettes and there's just a little bit less tobacco on the inside. I'm not exactly sure. Taking a look at the blend, though, we can see the blend is that of, I would have to say, a medium to dark blend, if you ask me, at least. And overall, smell-wise, man, these smell so good. I would love a candle that smells like this. These smell so dang good. Yeah, I would have to say the smell I'm getting is very much that of a sort of like mocha, cappuccino, vanilla, milky, slightly nutty scent. And it completely overpowers any sort of smell of clove that is in there, which is something I don't say a lot. Usually clove, in my opinion, is a very overpowering scent. I really am not smelling much clove in this cigarette at all. And I can't really smell any of the actual like tobacco itself either. This very much is a flavored clove cigarette without a doubt, and the flavoring is the most prominent smell of it. Overall, while this cigarette itself does not look like your standard Djarum Black by any means, it does still have a very solid, classic look to it with the marbleized cork-style filter, the little bit of the text on the filter itself as well, and then just the classic white paper going all the way down. As said, a little bit of nicotine staining, but overall, this cigarette is perfectly fine quality. It is it's perfectly fine quality, I'll acknowledge. Overall, the blend, as said, is I would have to say, medium to dark blend. And overall, yeah, look-wise, it looks good. Quality-wise, good. Smell-wise, it smells fantastic. As said, that mocha, cappuccino, vanilla, sort of milky, creamy scent with a little bit of nuttiness. That smells fantastic. And overall, I am looking forward to this. I do suppose, without further ado, I shouldn't hold back any longer. I've been wanting one of these since I since I opened up the pack, and I want some nicotine. So without further ado, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and get this lit up, grab myself a little bit of a thumbnail, and then after that, we're gonna find out just how the Djarum Black Cappuccino Clove cigarettes from Indonesia actually are for the very first time. I feel like I've got to sneeze real quick. Excuse me. And while I was kind of going over the look of the cigarette just for a second, it did start sprinkling, but thankfully it's gone away. Hopefully it doesn't start up again. That wouldn't be very good. But without further ado, let's get to smoking. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting a little bit of smoke in my eye. I'm just gonna try just for a little bit longer. Gotta grab a good thumbnail. Well, hopefully one of those will do as a thumbnail for the video. We will find out. One of the things I forgot to test before I got this lit up was whether the filter itself was sweetened. On some flavored clove cigarettes, there are sweetened filters, like the end of it will have a little bit of a ring of sugar on it or something like that. That does not appear to be the case with this cigarette, though. Overall, the body is very dense and is very big, I will acknowledge, as to be expected from a clove cigarette with, how much was it again? 25 milligrams of tar and 1.6 milligrams of nicotine. I'm not terribly surprised that the body is as big and as dense as it is. It is a pretty strong cigarette after all. Airflow-wise, seems to be pretty standard for a clove cigarette, definitely by normal cigarette standards. It would come across as being a constricted airflow. However, the standard for clove cigarettes that I've tried previously has been that the airflow is a little bit tighter than not kind of thing. There's a little bit more tobacco in it, a little bit more just stuff in it in general kind of thing. And so I would say that this is a pretty standard airflow for a clove cigarette. However, for any other normal cigarette, I would say that this is more of a slightly constricted airflow. More on the level of something like, let's say, I would say, almost an American Spirit. I would say almost an American Spirit. And I think I might have jinxed myself because it has started sprinkling again. If I need to, I'll go grab an umbrella. Ain't no rain gonna stop me from making my video, but I will put my pack of cigarettes in my pocket as I don't want no water droplets on it. But even with that constricted airflow, the draw itself is just that of a medium draw, and I think that's probably due to the lack of perforation on this cigarette and also due to the size of this cigarette. So yeah, medium, satisfying draw with a, I would have to say, constricted airflow in comparison to normal cigarettes, but a normal airflow when compared to other clove cigarettes. And I would say roughness and smoothness wise, this is very smooth. Of course, the clove is kind of numbing my mouth. It's kind of numbing my throat just a little bit. So definitely the cigarette's coming across a little bit smoother than not due to that. But I would have to say roughness and smoothness wise, around about a 6 out of 10 is what I'm experiencing right now. That might change as we get a little bit further on into the cigarette though, so I'll have to update y'all. And strength-wise, I would definitely have to say this is a more medium strength cigarette when compared to other Clove cigarettes. I mean, like, I've tried Clove cigarettes with like 40 milligrams of tar and over 2 milligrams of nicotine. This is certainly not a slacker on nicotine by any means, but like it's 25 milligrams of tar, 1.6 milligrams of nicotine. That's still stronger than a Marlboro Red. That's stronger than most cigarettes on the American market. And most cigarettes in a lot of markets, it is stronger than. When compared to other Clove cigarettes, though, this is more of a medium strength cigarette, I would say. But when compared to normal cigarettes, this is definitely a full flavored without a doubt, and it is getting me a little bit of a buzz, I will acknowledge. Although one other thing to mention is that for some reason, Clove cigarettes, even though they might have a lot of tar and a lot of nicotine, most of the time, they don't get me as buzzed as a comparably strong normal cigarette. And I think that's just due to how slow they smoke. And this cigarette itself is burning very slowly as well. If this was a normal cigarette from the United States of its same size and length, then I would definitely have to say it would probably already be done. But because this is a Clove cigarette, and because the Clove is making this cigarette smoke a little bit slower, and also due to that airflow as well, the little bit of the constricted airflow, it's smoking just a little bit slower, which is honestly something that I do appreciate, as I do enjoy my slower smoking cigarettes. But yeah, I would say strength-wise, this is probably somewhere around a 6 out of 10 for Clove cigarettes, and I would have to say like a 7.5 to almost 8 out of 10 for non-Clove cigarettes. Yeah. And taste-wise, it is quite nice. It's not quite as mocha cappuccino-y as I thought it was going to be based off the smell. It's definitely still Clove forward, without a doubt. However, honestly, that is to be expected. It's a Clove cigarette. And as well, that is not a bad thing in my personal opinion. I certainly do not mind it. I'm getting a little bit of sweetness on my lips. That's not coming from the filter, though. This is coming from the Clove smoke, I want to say. I think I definitely am going to need another one of these to really determine what the flavor is like. I have faith that the quality, cigarette to cigarette, will be consistent. That's what I've experienced from Djarum in the past, but the second cigarette will be to determine that as well. But yeah, Clove-wise, I'd say I'm getting like a sweet, savory Clove with a little bit of like, I would have to say like mocha cappuccino, vanilla, milk, a little bit of nuttiness going on in there as well, kind of thing. And that's just kind of the rough flavor that I'm tasting right now. But I'll have to let y'all know what the true flavor is once I get the second cigarette lit up. Before that, though, I am definitely going to need a little bit of a sip of water, kind of thing. These cigarettes definitely did get a little bit rougher towards the end. It was like a 6 out of 10 for most of the smoking experience, but at the very end, they definitely bumped up to more like a 7 or 8 out of 10 in my personal opinion. But let's go ahead and take a sip of water, have a little bit of a palate refresher, make sure my throat is working properly. Excuse me. Excuse me. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this pack opened up once again. Let's get another one of these cigarettes out, and let's get back to smoking, and let's get back to finding out just how the Djarum Black Cappuccino Clove cigarettes from Indonesia actually are in full, unedited detail. Yeah, I guess that's the right way of putting it, because this video is mostly unedited besides some warning labels and background music. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get this cigarette all lit up, and let's go ahead and get back to smoking. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying? And And I'm just gonna kind of sit back and relax for this one just a little bit. Excuse me. And I would definitely have to say that with this second cigarette, I can say without a doubt that the quality is consistent. The airflow is the same as the first one. The draw is the same. The roughness and smoothness, that's the same as it was at the very beginning of the first cigarette. And I would have to say strength-wise, well, I can't really tell so far as I've only taken 2 hits of this cigarette, but I assume it's going to be the same as well. Just getting a little bit of crackles from the Clove cigarette. Of course, hence its name in Indonesia, kretek, which if I remember correctly just means crackle in Indonesian. And definitely clove forward. But the more I pay attention to the taste, the more I go, okay, it's not only clove forward, there's also that mocha cappuccino that is very much forward as well. Excuse me. The clove is definitely, the amount of tar coming through these cigarettes definitely is coming through, without a doubt. It's definitely coming through. And one thing I'm really enjoying about this, it doesn't smoke too fast, it also doesn't smoke too slow. I've had some Clove cigarettes that literally burn for 12 minutes if I'm just smoking them normally kind of thing. This is more like a 6 to 7 minute cigarette in my personal opinion, and that's something that I do like. I do appreciate that it's not quite a 12-minute cigarette. I like my 12-minute cigarettes every once in a while, but I don't want that from a daily cigarette. And so this so far is definitely coming across like it's a Clove cigarette that I could actually daily. If I visited Indonesia and I was just looking for a solid daily cigarette, I do think that this would be a legitimate consideration of mine to say that correctly. I got my words just jumbled up for a second there, but yeah, these are smoking like a Clove cigarette, lengthwise, and how they smoke and just how they taste and everything like that, but it's not so different from a normal cigarette that I don't want it on a normal basis kind of thing. What's the actual flavor like, though? That's really what I'd want to determine now. I've determined that the quality is consistent. I can now say that the strength is consistent. So overall, definitely consistent cigarettes in taste, in just how they smoke and how they operate. But what's the flavor, what's the taste of this cigarette actually like? Well, it's definitely a cigarette that, in my opinion, would pair pretty well with tea. Probably with cappuccino, if I had to guess. Probably pretty well with coffee in general. And I think it would pair pretty well with hot chocolate, too. And I would say the flavor I'm getting, and I'm just going to kind of name a bunch of stuff, and then I'm going to figure out which portions are where at a later point, kind of thing, as I continue smoking. But I would say I'm getting that of a spicy, yet slightly sweet, sort of apple cider, clove sort of flavor, with undertones of, I would have to say, a little bit of like mocha, sort of like slight chocolatey, vanilla, milky, cream flavor with a little bit of nuttiness. That's kind of coming across like it's almost like almond milk or something like that kind of thing. And I would say maybe the slightest bit of a brown sugar as well. How is all of that actually oriented? That's kind of the flavor I'm getting, but how is it all actually oriented in order of prominence kind of thing? Now that is a good question. is definitely getting me a buzz. I am very buzzed right now. I am quite buzzed. But it's not like a buzz in the normal way a normal cigarette would get me a buzz. It's a little bit different. And that's definitely something I've noticed from Clove cigarettes in the past, and that's definitely something I can confirm is happening today as well. I would say the flavor of these cigarettes, it's not a cigarette that has a flavor that the more you smoke, the more you notice, per se. Kind of, well, the more you smoke of the individual cigarette, the more you notice for sure. But like having 2 cigarettes doesn't add on kind of thing. You might notice more than you noticed previously, but that's just because you're more used to the flavor kind of thing. Flavor-wise from this cigarette, there's definitely a lot of depth to it. But it's not depth that is best obtained by chain smoking per se. It's just depth that's best obtained by paying attention to how the cigarette tastes, I would say. And I would also have to say that as you get lower into the cigarette, the sort of mocha cappuccino, sort of vanilla flavor definitely becomes a little bit more intense. At the very beginning, that clove flavor is most intense in my personal opinion. But then it's also there at the bottom. I'm buzzed. The clove flavor is most intense at the beginning. It's got kind of a background of that mocha cappuccino, and at the end, it's kind of mocha cappuccino with a background of clove, I would say is really the right way of putting it. So there's definitely a little bit of dynamicness with how the cigarette tastes as you continue smoking. I'm going to go ahead and stub this out. See if I can get it fully out real quick. And I think I've determined what the flavor is really like, so we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But I just want to see where the filter itself actually begins. Real quick, I'm just going to try to get all the tobacco out. And we can see that the filter begins right about where this gold line is, I would say. But I definitely have to say where I stubbed it out is the best place to stub it out. It's best to stub it out right when you get to the thicker, sort of marbleized cork-style paper. And overall, the filter itself definitely does get a little bit mushy at the very end, and we can see there is no perforation, as that is a very thoroughly soaked filter that is filled with tar. Overall, I would say the flavor of the Djarum Black Cappuccino Clove cigarettes from Indonesia is that of a 50-50 clove and sort of mocha cappuccino sort of flavor. And I would say the flavor in order of prominence, and of course it's kind of going to depend on where you are in the cigarette, but in order of prominence from beginning to end of the cigarette, you get that of a, I would have to say, slightly spicy, sweet, sort of brown sugar and savory clove flavor with a sort of hot apple cidery undertone, maybe a little bit of cinnamon in there as well, kind of thing. And then under that, I would say, and this is really the portion you sort of start to notice as you continue smoking, I would say under that sort of clove flavor, you get that of a, I would have to say, mocha cappuccino, sort of vanilla, almond, or hazelnut sort of milk, creamy, milky flavor with, as said, that nuttiness in there, and I would say a little bit of a chocolate. Yeah, okay, so I would say the actual, like, cappuccino flavor area of the cigarette is very much that of a mocha cappuccino sort of chocolate flavor with an undertone of a, no, let me restart that. So it's that of a sort of mocha, trying to think of the right way to describe it. I've never actually had a cappuccino before. I don't drink chocolate, so I don't know if saying cappuccino is right. I do know mocha is right, but I don't know if saying cappuccino is actually correct, kind of thing, as I've never had a cappuccino coffee before. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink cappuccinos. I don't drink coffee in general. I'm more of a tea person, personally. But I would say, yeah, that of a sort of mocha, vanilla, milky, cream, almond, hazelnut, nutty flavor with a little bit of chocolate in there. And that chocolate, it's kind of like really smooth, sort of like creamy, mocha, vanilla, sort of chocolate, nutty, milky, creamy sort of flavor. And that's very much what the cappuccino area of the flavor of these cigarettes is actually like. So overall, you get that clove, you get that mocha. At the very beginning of the cigarette, it's very much that of a prominent clove flavor. At the end, it's more of that of a prominent sort of mocha cappuccino flavor, I would say. And overall, you get that of a, I would have to say, spicy, sweet, slightly savory clove, sort of hot apple cider, slightly cinnamon, slightly nutty sort of clove flavor. And then under that, you're getting that mocha, chocolate, vanilla. That's one thing I was forgetting. There's definitely vanilla as a flavor in there. You definitely get that sort of mocha, chocolate, nutty, almond, hazelnut, vanilla, creamy, milky flavor. And that's very much the flavor I'm getting from the Djarum Black Cappuccino Clove cigarettes from Indonesia. Overall, what are my final thoughts on them? What are my final thoughts on the Djarum Black Cappuccino flavor cigarettes from Indonesia? Do I like them? Do I not? Would I buy a pack with my own money? And am I going to be enjoying the rest of the pack? Yes, yes, and yes, frankly put. Yeah, I quite like these. I think these are really solid. Better than Djarum Blacks in the United States, in my opinion, which granted is not really a very even comparison. Djarum Blacks in the United States are a filtered cigar rather than being a true actual cigarette, of course. But definitely better, and absolutely significantly better than Djarum Blacks from the Japanese market, which I've tried in the past as well, and those were horrible. Oh my God, they were terrible. Worst clove cigarette I've ever had. They just tried to make them way too light. But the Djarum Black Cappuccinos from Indonesia, really, really, really solid. Really, really, really solid stuff that I personally really enjoy. Very solid quality cigarettes, good packaging, really nice flavor, a flavor that I really like. They smoke in a way that is familiar yet different. I really like them. I would definitely buy a pack with my own money if I'm ever in Indonesia. I will definitely enjoy smoking the rest of the pack, and I would definitely just buy another pack again in the future in general, without a doubt, no question in my mind. And these smoke in such a way that if I was in Indonesia and I wanted a cigarette that was familiar in kind of how it smokes in some ways, but was still a clove cigarette, I would look at the Djarum Blacks and go, I would look at the Djarum Black Cappuccinos, to be precise, and I would go, that is something that I think that cigarette can fill, kind of thing. It's kind of a halfway point between being a true, super intense clove cigarette, like, let's say, the Djarum 76 Madu Hitam, and something like, let's say, just a normal cigarette, like a Marlboro Red. It's kind of a halfway point, and that's something that I don't mind by any means, and I do quite like that. I can see why some people wouldn't like the fact that it is a halfway point. They want one or the other. But I like that it is kind of a halfway point, and that's something I really do appreciate, in all honesty. And, overall, I will acknowledge, I quite like the Djarum Black Cappuccinos. I think they're really solid. I really like the flavor. I really like how they smoke. I really like the strength. And I think that they would pair really well with hot chocolate, with cappuccino, more than like, if I had to guess. With tea as well, I think they would pair quite well with. And I think they're just solid smokes in general. Yeah. I quite like the Djarum Black Cappuccinos, and I think I can say with confidence that this pack will be disappearing a little bit faster than not. If I had to hazard a guess, at least. If I had to hazard a guess. But yeah, I think that's just about all I had to say for this video. Got to give this pack a rating, though. What rating do I want to give it? I think a very solid 8 out of 10. I think a very solid 8 out of 10 is deserving for the Djarum Black Cappuccinos from Indonesia. An 8 out of 10 is a very solid rating, and I think that the Djarum Black Cappuccinos definitely do deserve it. 8 out of 10 for them, as said, and overall, as said previously, they're a very solid cigarette that I very much have enjoyed smoking today, and I definitely am going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack. Appreciate y'all watching today's video. Hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video where I smoked and reviewed the Djarum Black Cappuccinos from Indonesia. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video, of course, like and subscribe. Check out everything in the description down below. I think that's all I had to say. So to the next one, stay safe in peace and have a great one.